Hello everyone. I'm going to show a few things here. I'm just making some lampshades. I've glued some fabric onto some cardstock, and I know you can't see the lines that I drew with a little template that you can see up near the right there, but I can see them. And this is how I'm going to make the lampshades for some bead lamps that I made previously. And then I'm going to trim them with some chenille. And it'll be chenille like I used on the seat and on the dressing table that I made in the previous video as well for this 1930s bedroom set. And this is just some gold paint that I'm using to paint the inside of the shade. And I'm just using waste cardboard that I've cut up. It's actually not cardstock. I think I said cardstock to begin with, but this is actually waste stuff that I'm recycling. Those are the end tables I made previously, and I'm just going to sand them, and then I'll paint them. And this idea came from some Strombecker end tables that I saw. They're not just like them, but they're similar in that they have 3 legs, and they're sort of a half circle. And I think the Strombecker furniture was from the 1930s. I'm not positive, but it was similar. And I'm just going to go around and sand them before I paint them and get off the big pieces that are sticking out. And then I'll put paint on them, and then in between the coats of paint, I'll use a 1500 grit sandpaper to sand in between the painting. And I will be using matte paint. I do tend to use matte paint for this furniture because that was really most of the furniture that I've seen that was made by Strombecker and Kage were matte, the paint. There were some varnished pieces, but I'm kind of sticking with that style. And I just used for the legs skewers that are bamboo. And they do have a little bit of roughness to them, vertical roughness. So I did have to sand them quite a bit, actually. And the feet are just beads, wooden beads that I had. And the rest is balsa wood. And I show how to put these together on the previous video that I made for this bedroom set. Very easy to do. The top and the bottom half circles are exactly the same. There's a lot of other things you could do to make this, nicer or fancier, but I wanted to keep it simple. And now I'm just using the same paint I used on the other pieces of furniture. It's all going to be the same color, same paint. This is Waverly, and it's by Plaid. And I don't know if they make Waverly anymore. I think they have rebranded it as something else. It's the same chalk paint, but it's called something different now. At least that's what I've seen. I don't know if anybody knows out there if they're still making this under the name Waverly or not. But I bought this paint on sale quite a few years ago, and I'm just now finishing it up, using it. I found that the beads, for some reason, didn't like taking the paint as readily. I think they were a little shiny. Now this is the template for the front of the dresser. And this is also based on some Strombecker furniture that I saw, loosely based on it. And it's a tall boy, and it will have 3 drawers on the bottom and 3 drawers on the top. And I just did a quick sketch there just to remind me. And I'm making it a little wider than the one Strombecker has out. And also the Strombecker is a solid piece of wood. And I'm not able to do that right now. There's my lamp bases that I made out of beads. So I'm actually just building everything out of balsa wood, the boxes that will make up the dresser, just like I've done in other videos. I mentioned this before. I did get an early Christmas present from my husband, which is a Ryobi scroll saw. So when I get that set up, I'll be able to use some different types of wood, and I'll be able to cut them more safely. It is a little risky cutting all of this out with an X-Acto knife. I have cut myself in the past. I'm very careful, but you just never know what'll happen. So I'm looking forward to getting the scroll saw set up. And these are the legs from the front. And I'm just going around and cutting it out very carefully. And then I go back over it several times. I don't try to cut it out in one stroke. It's just a little too dangerous for me. Except for doing it vertically against and when it's not against the grain, then the knife seems to go through it very quickly. But when you go against the grain, it's much more difficult. So I just take my time and do it several times over. Of course, you can't quite get it as exact as you could with a scroll saw, but then I don't think I could cut this balsa wood with a scroll saw. It probably would just disintegrate. But then I could use basswood or birch, which would be much harder and more durable. I'm just going to clean it up a little bit. And then I'm going to make the back. And the back will not be exactly the same as the front. It won't have that decorative element at the top. It'll just be straight across, but the same size otherwise. And as I said, the vertical cuts are easy. It's going against the grain that can be difficult, although that one wasn't too bad. It seems like when you see those dark streaks in the balsa wood, those dark streaks are very hard to cut through, perhaps because there's more wood resin in them that's hardened. Okay, and I just have to trim them, make sure they're both the same. And now I'm just going to make the sides. And I'm just going to measure down. I have to make two different types of sides, and then I'll have to put a piece across where that, you see that little piece sticking out of the side there where it's bigger. I'll have to flatten that out with another little piece. Well, you'll see what I mean once I get there. I do have a bit of a runny nose today, so excuse me if I sniff. I'm not getting a cold. I think it's just some sort of an allergic reaction that I've been having. It's been going on a few days. And I'm just going to make the side legs by using the piece I've already cut out to make sure they're similar in size. And now I'll make the other bottom side. I had to recut it. It just didn't look quite right, so that's what you saw me just do. Just get that circle in there. All right. Now I have to do the upper part because that needs sides on it as well. And now I'm going to glue it together. And as I've said before, I use pins to hold these things together. And it just seems to be easier for me. And the pins just go right through the balsa wood. So I'm not using any clamps or anything like that. The balsa wood would be dented if I used clamps anyway. It's just too soft. And if I'm careful, I can make this work, so. And it will. It'll work eventually. I straighten it all out when I get it all put together to make sure it's not wonky. And the pins allow for that too, so. I just try to make it the ends flush. And I'll put the upper sides in. And I'm using the same glue that I always use by DAP. And just position this again so it's flush. If I need to fill in any gaps later, I'll just do it with some epoxy sculpt or some of the porcelain clay that I made. That seems to work really well too. Except for the porcelain clay can shrink up to 12%, between 10 and 12%. So it's, unless it's a really small thing, it's probably not a good idea to use that. Like a really small crack. Okay, you can see it's still crooked, but it won't be when I finish it. It will be straight. This is a very easy way to make a dresser, but of course you can't open the drawers. On most of the furniture, though, that I'm sort of imitating, the furniture is not really functional. It's just play furniture, and it's just made it was just made to be sturdy. And the children would have to use their imaginations, of course, if they wanted open drawers and that sort of thing. So, of course, that's going to make this much easier and quicker. Some of these are quilting pins that I'm using today. I had a lot of corsage pins for the heavier stuff, and most of these are actually just quilting pins. Okay, it's dry. I'm going to pull them all out, and I still have a little bit of gluing to do because there is a gap that needs to be filled on both sides. And, well, it looks like I dropped that little bit of film where I did that. That's the lampshade on the wooden beads that I put together. There's a toothpick in there, and then there's 2 wooden beads, and then I painted it, put some nail art on it, and then used triple thick to cover it so it looks more glassy. And now I'm sanding this, and I did drop the film out where I inserted that little piece where the dresser juts out, and you'll see that it's there. I don't know what happened to the film. I just lost it somehow. I probably accidentally deleted it. Well, I'm going to get ready now to put the drawers on, and I just have to do a little measuring. There'll be 2 drawers on the top and 3 on the bottom. So I've cut some pieces out, more than I needed, but some of them don't look like they're the right size, so I'm just going to sand them all and then compare them and put the ones that look best together. And this is a little piece of square dowel. It's just balsa wood, just to give it some definition. I'll put 3 pieces, one on the bottom, one where it separates from the top and the bottom, and then I will put one on the top. And I'm just eyeballing it to put it in. Just very easy to do. Just put a couple of pins to hold it in place. Now these are very thin silk pins that I'm using because the other pins are too heavy and they would split the wood. So these little blue-headed pins you see are for silk, and they're very fine pins, so they went right through and they didn't damage the wood at all. Now I have a blog spot that I've started, and I can eventually I will put some of these templates into the blog spot where you could go in and grab them for free. Right now there's some rugs, there's wallpaper, and some flooring that you could, if you want to click on the blog spot in my bio, go there and you can just grab them and print them off. And there's some brief instructions about them. And the images are all from the 1930s that are there. They're not copyrighted. Some of them are images that I made myself too, so. And they're free. Okay. Now I'll just have to wait for that to dry. And then I'll pull those pins out. There are some things I would have changed. This is the first dresser I've ever made. And I think for the next thing that I do, I know what I'll do if I make this sort of 1930s colonial style. In the 1930s, there was a revival of colonial style furniture. And although the furniture wasn't always made exactly like the antique furniture, it still had the feeling about it. You could still look at it and say, this is sort of colonial revival furniture made for modern families. And that's what I've tried to do here. And that colonial revival lasted well into the 1950s. Yeah, I made that just a little bit too long, the drawers. So I'm ending up cutting new pieces here. And I'm just going to cut out extra stuff just to make sure I do this correctly this time. And I'll just be very careful. And then I will sand them down so they're more even, because the blade moves around and sometimes you get a slanted cut and it's not exactly the way you want it. So you have to kind of be careful with that. All right, 3. And I'll glue those in after I sand them completely. And this is 600 grit sandpaper. And I'll just trim them up a little here and there just to make sure they're straight. The factory-made furniture during that time, it was anything but perfect. They look like they really slapped that stuff out, but it was well made as far as it's being sturdy. And I think that was what people really appreciated. Plus the fact it wasn't expensive. The average person could afford to buy that furniture for their kids, even though it was during the Depression, the 1930s. Now I'm going to glue this on. I'm just going to eyeball it. I'm not going to mark anything on there. I'm not going to spend 15 hours trying to measure exactly where it goes. I'm just going to look at it and then put it on. For me, that works pretty well. So, and you have a few seconds to move stuff before it starts soaking into the wood. So I'll just put these in place, these pins, and when this is all dried, then I'll paint it all. I'll sand it again and then paint it. So now I'm going to put the bottom drawers in. These are really wide. I probably should have made this dresser, like a 3/4 of an inch narrower, but it still works fine. That was the other thing I would change. It's still 1/12 size though. It's the right height. So if I do leave a template for this, what I'll do is I will redraw the template and make it a little narrower in my new blog that has the free stuff. And I will keep adding to that. So check it out, see if there's anything that's useful, and feel free to grab it. I don't use copyrighted stuff, so never fear. I'm very careful about that. Now these are just some little things I made to put in the house when it's done, and I just thought I'd show them real quick. Little pictures for the time period. Okay, that's dry. Doesn't take too long. I usually leave it overnight, but I think I only left it like 4 hours and came back to it this time, and it was stuck pretty well, so I wasn't moving around. Just give this a really good sanding. Balsa wood chips easily, and I'm sure most of you know this. Most people who make miniatures seem to use balsa wood a good deal of the time. But it can be repaired. You can put fillers in and stuff to cover up cracks and chips and things if you see them. Sometimes I don't see them, and I have to be more careful in looking at it when I finish it, especially after I paint it. That's when you really see the imperfections, especially with the matte paint, chalk paint. Matte usually hides, like if you paint a wall with matte paint, it will hide more of the imperfections than gloss will. But this chalk paint seems to actually enhance them, almost make them the mistakes sculptural. I don't know. But I like the chalk paint. I like the way it looks and feels. I just give it a sanding, and that usually fixes most of the problem. This is a very light blue. It's actually bluer in person when you look at it than the way the light is showing it here. It sort of washes it out. And I debated the color, but I did see some light blue furniture like this that was pretty neat. And I think it was, well, I don't know what brand it was, but it's of that period and of the same style as what I always mention, which is Kage and Strombecker. And but I don't know who the maker was for sure. But it had the same color, and all of the furniture was painted that way, and that's where I got the idea. Okay, just go around and keep painting. Paint does cover up a lot of the mistakes, which is good. It fills in all those little holes too with the pins. It just plugs them right up. Okay, this is the second coat. And I already sanded it once in between. I just didn't show it. And the second coat's, of course, much easier. I just didn't do the back yet, but I'll just give the back probably one coat. I think that's all I did, is one coat on the back. Okay, now I'm going to put on the handles, and all this is some nail art and a pin. Couldn't be easier. And I just have all the same size pins, and I have so many pins that it's just much easier to use than, beads. And at the top, you'll see I put a bead, and I put right at the top, like these finials, the 3 finials, I put a decorative bead and a pin right through it. Just stuck it right through the wood. And it's finished. There it is. Now I'm going to make a Delft deer. And this is just a really flimsy, cheap piece of plastic deer that I bought at, it was probably the Goodwill in a bag full of other stuff. And I had to carve the eyes off of it because the eyes were so weird looking. And I trimmed it up, and I'm just glued it on that little piece of balsa wood, scrap balsa wood, and I'm just going to paint the whole thing white, first with matte paint. And then I'm going to put a couple of coats of matte paint on it. Everything, the whole base and the deer, everything, and the bottom even. Just paint it all up. And that's just apple barrel, flat paint, white, titanium white, I think. I just wanted something to put on top of the dresser. And I've seen some dollhouses from the era of 1930s, and there were, these Delft animals, maybe not this big in comparison to what the dresser would be, but I thought I'd just do it as a focal point. And they did have stuff like this, so. Just gonna keep going with it and putting a second coat on the body now. I didn't paint the two sides of the base yet. And I'm going to give it a final coat with golden titanium white, which is not a matte paint. It's not exactly a gloss paint either, but it isn't matte. It's kind of a semi-gloss, I guess, or a satin finish on it. And there's the deer painted. And now what I'm going to do is take these blue and white nail art pieces that I just showed you after I finish the base. Make sure and touch it up. And when it dries, I'm going to put those stickers. There's actually a sticky part to them, the nail art. I'm going to put super glue on them to make sure they stay put, but you'll see that it's coming. I just wanted to show that to you. I'm giving it another coat of the golden paint. And now you can't see those awful eyes I carved out. They were like, I don't know, they were like cartoon eyes that were strange. It made the deer look kind of sinister, actually. Okay. And I'm not going to use the ones with the gold border. There's just flowers. There's the golden paint that I used. And I'm doing it again. I just remembered I gave it quite a few coats. I had forgotten that. It really did need it. I needed it to fill in more of the scratches and things that were on it. So I think I actually ended up giving it 2 coats of matte and 3 coats of the golden titanium white. And the matte was matte apple barrel finish. First 2 coats. I was using it as a base coat. All right, it's dry. Now I'm going to put this fingernail art all over it, but not on the base. And I'm just adding super glue to it, as I said before, because I just make sure it sticks. It doesn't come off, because it is just a sticky layer, and I don't trust it. These are rather hard to get off the background. I did finally figure out that you could peel the whole background off of it around the stuff, and it made it a little easier, duh. But I don't do fingernail art. I don't do my fingernails, except on rare occasions. I might put some polish on them, but so I'm not real up on how to use this stuff, I guess. I did figure it out after, of course, the deer was done. But now I know you can actually take the corner and peel the whole background off, and then those little stickers are individual and much easier to peel off that way. And I'm just trying to space these evenly so that it's the front and the back and the legs and even the antlers will have some of this floral design in blue. I could have painted this, but it seemed like it was going to take forever. And I had this nail art, and I thought this would be a great use for this. So I just went ahead and decided to do it this way instead. Well, I'm out of the camera, but all I was doing was scraping something. So I don't think it matters. Okay, let's put some on the face. What I'm trying to do is just, make it so that there isn't the same two designs next to each other, and that every flower is positioned differently to give it a different look. Put some around the legs. I was going to make the lamps Delft on the bottom, and I changed my mind. So I'm glad I did change my mind. I wouldn't have had enough of these left over. And then I decided to do the deer because I had these. And I really wanted something, as I said, for the top of the dresser to make a kind of a focal point. There's sort of eclectic combination of realistic stuff and not so realistic in my doll rooms now, which it seems to work. Kind of like the way my mother used to decorate. She decorated with what we had, and the thing that she mainly did was stick to color themes. But there were all sorts of different patterns mixed up and different types of furniture, but somehow it always worked. And people used to compliment her on her decorating skills, but it was all just, a mishmash. But somehow she made it work, so that's kind of what I'm doing. Well, we didn't have a lot of money when I was growing up, and we made do with what we had, and we had a lot of leftover stuff from grandparents and stuff other people didn't want, and my mother would fix it up, and we would use it. And she did a lot of sewing, and she made curtains and pillowcases and all sorts of stuff, so. There we go. It's a little tedious, I have to admit. I am not the most patient person in the world. I like to see results. But there, see, I did pull that off. I didn't remember putting it on camera. I finally figured that out on my own. I don't know why I didn't think of it before. It did make it a lot easier to finish it. I didn't have to struggle so much, kept trying to find a little end. These little itty bitty images of flowers. I really do love the fingernail art, though for making miniatures, there's so much stuff out there that you can use. It's not real cheap, though. I mean, it is, some of it's kind of expensive. I try to buy the stuff on sale. And I'm just going to paint the nose in and an eye here and there and put a few dots on the antlers just to, because I ran out of flowers. To make it look more consistent. There. Now when that's dry, I'm going to put a layer of triple thick over it. You just saw the bottle really quickly. Triple thick's pretty good stuff. I used it for the sink in the kitchen and on the lamp bases. And I'm going to cover this with 2 coats of triple thick. I'll let it dry for a day or 2 between coats. And this will look like glass when it's done. It'll look like ceramic. I know it's a little big, but I wanted to use it, and the next time I make some of this Delft stuff, I'll probably use the smaller stuff, like little horses, and there's other stuff, more deer I have, and maybe some little plates that are, a different color that I don't like, and I could make Delft plates with this stuff. There it is. Now it's all dry. It has 2 coats of triple thick on it. And it looks like ceramic. I mean, it really does. I could have done more with the base, but it's going to be on top of that dresser, so you wouldn't see it as much, so I didn't. Now, although I'm not going to have curtains showing in the room that I'll show at the end, I'm making the curtains anyway because I am making the dollhouse. And yes, I am making a dollhouse. The Keystone dollhouse that I have, it's just too small for the furniture I've made. But this is the bedspread, and I went through all this stuff, I think, before. This is Liberty of London, and I had to decide which curtain material I would use, and I didn't end up using that one. I ended up using this, and I made a better base for making curtains than I had before. I made a bigger one out of the not popsicle, but lollipop sticks, 2 different sizes, and I alternated them, and I glued them on a piece of cardboard. And again, I'm just going to cover this whole thing with fray check. And why I use fray check is because it dries clear without changing the color of the fabric. And it isn't quite as stiff as some of the other methods. Like some people use sugar, they use watered down Elmer's glue, and there's also fabric stiffeners you can buy. But this for me seems to work really well. And it doesn't get so stiff that you can't sort of bend the fabric. It doesn't become crispy, but it does stay put, and it won't shred or fray. And I'm just going in between these sticks with a bookbinding tool. And I'm not going to use the ends that are off of this because I will make these drapes a little bit narrower and they'll be long. But these won't be in the room. But that's what they look like. And I'm just going to paint the curtain rod, which is just gold paint. It's just a skewer, bamboo skewer, and 2 wooden beads. That's it. Those are the windows to my Keystone. I have a couple of windows and that I have to put into it. I'm waiting for parts for that, actually. So you won't be seeing that until I get all the parts. And then I'm going to do videos on how I restore that. I started restoring it, but I couldn't get parts. So I had to stop. Very hard to find parts for these Keystone doll houses. Okay, And this is just a piece of cardboard to hold the drapes for now. They're not going to be on cardboard. And I'm going to put them in front of a dollhouse window for that bedroom. But I just wanted to show you how I made them, and I'm just going to store them on cardboard. And the window will be nowhere near as big as that piece of cardboard, but this is just for my own purposes. It's actually from a Kleenex box, that cardboard. It's just to give me an idea of what I want to do. And it's a little bit too wide, so I wanted to trim it down. And I'm just going to glue the beads on the ends after I trim this skewer. I'll finish these curtains at another time. After I get my dollhouse built, then I'll put them in. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe and leave a comment. Bye-bye.